Hello and welcome to my channel, The Orchid Hut. My name is Dana, and today's video is going to be what I hope is a relatively quick repot of a Cattleya type orchid. So let's go ahead and get started and have a look at what we're dealing with here. This was a Better Grow orchid that I purchased 2 or 3 months ago. It was a bag baby, and it's a Brassolalia Cattleya Copper Queen. So it's a Richard Miller crossed with Toshi Akai, but I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly because some of those letters are a little bit missing on that tag. So I will look that one up and be sure when I edit this video to get the proper name on the screen. But in any case, the bloom is just a gorgeous sort of copper color with a very frilly and spotted lip. And I really look forward to this one blooming because it has a really, really nice bloom. And it spent a little bit of time outdoors and in the garage while the temperatures were still tolerable, but has been under the grow lights in the house now. Since I brought all of my outdoor orchids in. And in that time, it has started to develop this new growth right here, as well as the new root growth on the top of the pot. Now, as you can see, the media is a tiny bit sketchy here. It looks like the bark that's here is broken down quite a bit. There's a good bit of perlite in this media from what I can tell at the top, and maybe some charcoal pieces, but of course we'll see that a little bit better when we dump the orchid out here in a minute. So before I do that, a quick update on the weather in Southeast Texas. It is a beautiful 75-degree Fahrenheit sunny day here. Absolutely gorgeous. By 3 in the morning, it's going to be 38 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's a cold front moving through. It's going to get really, really chilly overnight. By morning, they say the wind chill might be in the upper 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're about to have another drastic weather shift here. There are a few orchids that I've been keeping in the garage because they can tolerate it even when the temperature drops a bit lower, but I think I will even be bringing those in the house tonight and for the next 2 nights until it warms back up again. So that's the game we play with the temperature here in Southeast Texas. Okay, so this may have been in this pot quite a while. It's not immediately cutting loose here. Feels like it's resisting at the bottom of the pot quite a bit. There we go. Okay, so the usual Better Grow styrofoam chips. And you know, I resisted the urge to repot this when I first got it. The media to me, you know, seemed rather old, but I wanted to give this a chance to adjust before taking it out of the pot. I try to follow my own golden rules on that point. And it's always best to kind of see that new growth getting underway before repotting. Well, that's rather bizarre. Okay, so right here, there seems like there's just a very random sort of lump of sphagnum moss. You never know what you're going to find when you unpot these orchids. And it seems like I say this every time I do one of these, but you know, you get these into your home environment and you take care of them based on what you see on the top of the media, and then you find out that's not exactly what is throughout the pot. Yes, this was definitely in desperate need of something fresh. Even the perlite seems like it was just like, it's almost like it's perlite dust instead of perlite pieces or sponge rock. Oh, this is probably the most bizarre thing. So there's like one section here that was right on the edge of the pot that was moss. Why that was in there in such a random way, who knows? I'm just not even quite sure what to say about this. Okay, so while I'm picking this media off, we can talk just a little bit about the care for this orchid. So it's an intergeneric hybrid, Brassivola crossed with a Laelea, Cattleya type orchid, which I think Laeleas are all Cattleyas now. So it's an intergeneric hybrid, but both of those orchids are more what we would call high light orchids, so higher light than Phalaenopsis. And so when this is growing outdoors in the spring and later on in the summer, it will get a couple of hours of direct sun, like first thing in the morning when the sun comes up. But then it will be in bright light the rest of the day, and midday, even a more shady condition, and then in the late afternoon protected from that sun as well, because it is the late afternoon sun I find that can burn the Cattleyas here in southeast Texas. The sun is most intense in the summer right around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So bright light, that's what helps these bloom. They do like a bit of a temperature differential at night. I can't say that I really feed these any differently than I do my other orchids, but they do like to dry out in between watering. So that's the reason Cattleya bark is often a bit chunkier and less water retentive, and I'm not understanding why anybody would put sphagnum moss in the mix. I certainly won't be doing that when I repot this. Okay, so we're going to take a little brief pause here. I'm going to take this over to the sink and give it a rinse, clean up the mess that I have, and be back to pot this. Okay, so we're back from the sink. This root system is not one of the worst that I've seen, but it's certainly not one of the best either. Let's kind of have a look here. It's kind of got a bit of a upward growth pattern. So the youngest pseudobulb here, probably when it was a seedling, you know, the rhizome is going from this direction to this direction, and you can see how it's like a bit uphill as the pseudobulbs get larger and larger. So when I repot this, I want to make certain that this newest growth is able to have its roots close to the media. And I may take off this youngest leaf here because that will still leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I leave this first one, I have a feeling that it will be buried too far into the media. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. That's also where the oldest root system is, and most of that root system would have been cut away anyway when I trim it, because it's soggy and most of those roots are dead. So that did not harm the plant at all. Okay, cutters have been previously flamed. And let's have a look at the rest. So this would be the next oldest growth, but it looks like some of the root system under that is still viable. It might need a bit of a trim. We'll see what's left. If I end up cutting away all of the roots on that next oldest pseudobulb, then I'll just take the pseudobulb off as well. Yeah, so these roots are still okay-ish. And it's underneath that next growth, so I'll just leave that. This is a bit loose and wobbly. This really has a rather mixed root system here. Some of it is okay, and some of it is not okay at all. Any place you see those threads, that means that the root around it has died, and that needs to be trimmed away as you're doing this repotting exercise. The new growth on this Cattleya type orchid, I think, may have been somewhat encouraged by the grow lights that it has been under for the last 6 weeks or so. I really am enjoying having those grow lights. I think it is encouraging the plants to not stall with their growth quite as much. And so when they move outdoors in the spring, what I'm hoping is that they will have a little bit of a head start with their growth process. There are some places here where it's like a piece of the root is dead, but then right next to it, it's branching out with a new root. So I'm trying very carefully to cut off what's dead without damaging anything new that might want to grow right next to it. Okay, so without being too aggressive here, I think we are getting close to being finished. Just a few more little places. Now, if you happen to start hearing noise in the background, that's the neighbors having their yard cut and edged and mowed and all that good stuff. My husband and I still do our own yard work, and we're on a corner, so a corner lot, so it's a bit more than most people have, but we still enjoy doing it, and may as well keep doing it for good exercise while we can. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, I do feel the need to spray this with hydrogen peroxide. That media that it was in was rather old. I was seeing maybe a little bit of indication of mold. All right, so while we let this dry, clean this mess and let me get a new paper towel. Someone asked me the other day, why not just recycle newspaper to do your repotting on? And I do use newspaper when I'm not filming it, but what I found is that if I have newspaper laid out right here and I try to film on top of the newspaper, that the color of the ink and the darkness of the paper interferes with your ability to see the details of what I'm doing, because it's not on a more white background. So I do use paper towels when I'm filming, but if I'm not filming, then I do just recycle my newspaper, which is probably a bit more earth friendly. Okay, let's see. What should we do with the pot here? I have a couple of choices. Now, it's going to look like these pots are dirty, but really they're just dusty because I've been transferring media in them. So they are clean pots, even though they look a little bit dusty. I do not want to overpot this. It needs room to grow, yes, but Cattleyas do not like to be swimming in large pots. So I'll definitely be going with something this size. You know, either one I think would be perfectly okay. This one will allow me to see the root growth a little bit better because it's not quite as opaque as this one. So let's just go ahead and go with this. And I do have some large cork pieces and bark pieces to put at the bottom so the pot does not clog up. And this reminds me that I need to reorder some of these supplies. All right, this is my typical Cattleya bark. It's medium bark, some leca, some sponge rock, and some regular rock. Put a little bit in. Cattleya roots like to have air, and they do not want to have wet feet ever, so be sure to always let them dry out before you rewater. Okay, that lawn noise is really getting loud now. And I want to make sure not to bury those older pseudobulbs and at the same time have the newer growth close enough to the bark so that those roots can reach down in there. And this root system is not particularly extensive, so I'm only going to press down just enough to kind of stabilize the plant a little bit. And those new roots are all still right here at the top of the bark. And let's look around the edges of the plant. Now, there's a relatively large gap right here, so let me get a skewer and see if I can poke some of that media down. So how is it that the timing of the yard work could coincide exactly with me trying to record a video with audio? Maybe I should look on Friday afternoons at 3 o'clock, not to plan on videoing anything, if that's going to be their time to be here. I imagine, though, some people living in apartments have to listen to construction noise and street noise a good bit, but in a house you don't expect to have that so much right under your window. Okay, looking around. Looks pretty good, although a little bit wobbly because it just doesn't have enough of a root system in the pot to stabilize it. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. It could benefit from a stake at some point. If I don't move it around that much and allow those new roots to work their way into the media a bit more, it should be just fine. Okay, so a very noisy Cattleya type repot. If you enjoyed watching and listening to this video, please give it a thumbs up, and the subscribe button will be coming up in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Thanks so much for watching. I think I'll be getting a steak. See you next time. Okay, so thank goodness the yard crew noise has finally stopped. So I've given this Cattleya type orchid a nice drink of water and a stake with a butterfly clip to help hold it upright in the pot until it's better able to establish some roots to help it stay stable.